The first time I saw her, she was inspecting my front gate like it had personally insulted her ancestors. I hadn't even finished unpacking the moving truck yet. There was no welcome pie, no friendly wave from the porch, just this woman standing at the edge of my property line, jotting things down on a clipboard with a pen that looked like it cost more than my first car. I didn't know her name then. I certainly know it now. And if you have ever had a neighbor who treats the neighborhood covenants like a holy scripture that only they can interpret, you probably know where this is going. Or maybe you don't. Because let me tell you, this didn't end with a simple argument over property lines. It ended with federal charges. My name is Mark, and about a year ago, I was looking for an escape. My divorce had just been finalized, the ink was barely dry on the papers, and I felt like I had been living in a blender set to high for 2 years straight. I didn't want a condo in the city. I didn't want a suburban cul-de-sac with block parties. I wanted silence. That's how I found the cabin. It was a 2-story cedar build, tucked so far back into the Blackwood pines that you couldn't see the roof from the main road. The property was surrounded by a sturdy, 6-foot wooden fence, and at the entrance, there was a heavy timber gate with a solid iron latch. To me, that gate wasn't just wood and metal. It was a boundary. It was the line where the rest of the world stopped and my life began. When I locked it that first night, listening to the wind move through the trees, I finally felt like I could breathe. But looking back, I should have known that gate was going to be the catalyst for the craziest 6 months of my life. You see, I'm a land surveyor by trade. I spend my days defining boundaries, reading deeds, and telling people exactly where their land ends and their neighbors begins. I respect lines, but I was about to meet a woman who thought lines were just suggestions for other people. The trouble started about a week after I moved in. I got a welcome to the neighborhood email. Now, I knew the area had an HOA. Most places do these days, but the listing agent had assured me they were hands-off. Well, this email was about as hands-off as a stranglehold. It was a wall of text, signed by a woman named Patricia Patty Vance, HOA president. The tone was unsettled. It wasn't "welcome, neighbor." It was "we are watching you." It listed expectations for community cohesion, open communication protocols, and visual harmony. There was even a paragraph requesting a mandatory social photo for the neighborhood bulletin so that everyone knows who belongs and who doesn't. It reminded me of the way my ex-wife used to ask questions that were actually accusations. I printed the email, filed it under things to ignore, and went back to organizing my kitchen. I just wanted to be left alone. That fantasy lasted exactly 4 days. I was out front, assessing a dead oak tree near the driveway, when a pristine, pearl-white SUV rolled up to my gate. Out stepped Patty Vance. She looked like she was dressed for a high-stakes board meeting, not a walk in the woods. Perfectly coiffed hair, a blazer that looked uncomfortable in the heat, and that signature clipboard. She didn't knock on the gate. She didn't call out. She just stood there, testing the latch, frowning when she found it locked. I walked down the driveway, coffee mug in hand. "Can I help you?" "Hello there," she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that usually precedes a critique. "I'm Patricia Vance. I'm sure you got my email. I noticed you haven't sent in your photo yet." "I'm still unpacking," I said, keeping the gate between us. "Nice to meet you, Patricia." "It's Patty," she corrected, her eyes scanning the timber of my gate like she was looking for termites. "You know, Mark, we have an open community policy here. We value transparency. This gate, it sends the wrong message. It feels a bit hostile, unfriendly." I stared at her. "Ma'am, I bought this place for the privacy. The gate stays locked because I like it locked." She paused, tilting her head like I was a toddler who didn't understand the rules of the playground. "Well, we all have to make adjustments for the greater good of the community spirit. We'll talk more about it later." She got back in her SUV and drove off, but as she left, I saw her make a note on her clipboard. I stood there, watching the dust settle, and I got that prickle on the back of my neck. The kind that tells you you're being hunted. That was the opening shot. 3 days later, I went to check the mail and found a sticky note on the gate latch. Yellow, square, innocent looking. In neat cursive, it read, "Let's try to be a little more open today. P." I peeled it off, crumpled it up, and felt my blood pressure spike. She had come onto my property, or at least right up to the line, to leave a passive-aggressive note. It was infantile, but it was just the beginning. Within a week, the official letters started arriving. And I mean official. Heavy cardstock, The HOA seal embossed at the top, referencing bylaws and subsections. Violation 1. Mailbox positioning is 2.5 inches non-compliant with roadside offset standards. Violation 2. Improper maintenance of garden beds. I didn't have a garden bed. I had a forest floor. Violation 3. Excessive exterior illumination. I had a single 60-watt porch bulb. I sat at my kitchen table, reading these letters, and I realized what she was doing. She was paper bombing me. It's a classic tactic. Overwhelm the target with so much bureaucratic nonsense that they just give up and comply to make the headache go away. She wanted the gate gone, and she was going to annoy me into submission. But she made one critical error. She didn't know who she was dealing with. I'm a surveyor. I speak fluent bureaucracy. I know how to read a plat map, I know how to interpret zoning codes, and I know when someone is making things up. I spent that weekend turning my living room into a war room. I pulled the county records, the original HOA charter, the property deeds, everything. And what I found was fascinating. Patty was lying. The mailbox offset standard she cited, it didn't exist in the current bylaws. It was from a proposal that was voted down in 2015. The garden maintenance clause applied only to the manicured lawns in the front of the subdivision, not the wooded lots in the back. And my lighting? Completely within code. She was bluffing. She was using the weight of the HOA letterhead to bully people, banking on the fact that nobody would actually read the 50-page rulebook. I decided not to engage just yet. I wanted to see how far she would push it. And oh boy, did she push. 2 weeks later, I was working from home when I saw movement on my security cameras. I'd installed a few wildlife cams around the perimeter, mostly to watch for deer or bears, but they were about to catch a different kind of predator. I looked at the monitor and saw Patty at my gate. But she wasn't alone. She had 2 men with her, wearing neon vests and carrying tool belts. They were measuring the width of my driveway entrance. I walked out the front door. "Can I help you?" Patty looked up, startled but defiant. "Oh, Mark. Good. We're just doing a preliminary assessment for the drainage improvement project. We need to check the culvert running under your driveway." One of the workers, an older guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, wouldn't meet my eyes. "Patty," I said, my voice calm but loud enough to carry. "You know that any work on private property requires a 48-hour written notice and owner consent. I haven't received either." "This is an emergency assessment," she snapped. "Community safety supersedes your little rules." "It's not my rule," I said, stepping closer. "It's state law. And if these men step 1 foot past that gate without a warrant or a work order signed by me, I'm calling the sheriff for trespassing." The older worker immediately stopped what he was doing. He looked at Patty. "Lady, you said this was cleared." "It is cleared," Patty shrieked, her mask slipping. "I am the president. I'm not getting arrested for a culvert," the worker muttered. He packed up his tape measure and walked back to his truck. Patty stood there, fuming. She pointed a manicured finger at me through the slats of the gate. "You are obstructing progress, Mark. You are being selfish. And trust me, the community is going to hear about this." She stormed off. I watched her go, adrenaline thumping in my chest. I knew I had won the battle, but I had just declared war. The retaliation came in the form of a rumor campaign. Suddenly, neighbors I hadn't even met were giving me the stink eye when I drove past. I heard whispers at the local grocery store. Apparently, the story was that my illegal gate was blocking emergency vehicle access and creating a fire hazard for the whole neighborhood. I called the fire chief. He laughed. "Block access? Son, your driveway is wide enough for a tank. We have 0 issues with your property." So, she was lying to the neighbors to turn them against me. It was isolating. It felt like living in a fishbowl where everyone was tapping on the glass. I started to have trouble sleeping. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, checking the cameras, half expecting to see a mob with pitchforks. But the real break in the case didn't come from a document. It came from a Tuesday night at 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep, so I was reviewing my camera footage from the previous night, just checking for deer. I was scrolling through the timeline when I froze. There, on the grainy night vision feed, was a figure. It was Patty. She was creeping up my driveway in the dead of night, holding a flashlight and a drill. I watched, stunned, as she unscrewed my house number sign from the post next to the gate. Then, she reached into a bag and pulled out a metal sign. She screwed it into my post. She stood back, admired her work, and then, and this is the part that still gives me chills, She looked directly at the house, hesitated for a second, and then crept away. I grabbed a flashlight and ran out to the gate. I shined the light on the new sign. Public access road. Authorized vehicles only. She had committed vandalism and trespass to put up a fake sign claiming my driveway was a public road. Why? Because if it was a public road, I couldn't have a gate. I stood there in the dark, and instead of anger, I felt a strange sense of calm. Because she had just handed me the smoking gun. This wasn't an HOA dispute anymore. This was criminal activity. But I didn't call the cops. Not yet. I had a better idea. I sent an email to the entire HOA board. Not just Patty, but the treasurer, the secretary, everyone. The subject line was simple: unauthorized activity on private property, video attached. I didn't make accusations. I didn't rant. I just wrote, I believe there has been a misunderstanding regarding signage on my property. Please see the attached security footage from 2:14 a.m. this morning. The fallout was immediate. Within 6 hours, my phone rang. It wasn't Patty. It was a woman named Sarah Miller. She was a former board member who had resigned a year ago. We need to talk, Sarah said. Meet me at the diner on Main Street. Come alone, and bring everything you have. I met Sarah an hour later. She looked tired. She told me the story of why she quit. Years ago, Patty had targeted Sarah's mother, driving the poor woman into a state of constant anxiety over petty violations until she sold her house and moved into assisted living. Sarah had been collecting evidence ever since, waiting for someone with enough backbone and enough documentation to help her take Patty down. She wants your land, Sarah said, sliding a folder across the table. Look at this. I opened the folder. It contained blueprints. Old ones. They were for a project called the Creekview Connector. It was a proposal to build a scenic road connecting our subdivision to the main highway. And that road? It went right through my living room. The city denied this permit 5 years ago, I said, my surveyor eyes scanning the lines. This project is dead. The city knows it's dead, Sarah said. The HOA board doesn't. Patty has been collecting special assessment fees for this road project for 3 years. She claims it's still in development. She needs her gate gone so she can show investors that the path is clear. Investors? I asked. For an HOA road? Not just the road, Sarah whispered. She's been funneling the construction budget into a landscaping company owned by her brother-in-law. They've been doing prep work that nobody ever sees. It was embezzlement. Massive, systematic fraud. She wasn't just a Karen. She was a crook. We spent the next 2 hours connecting the dots. The fake violations, the harassment, the attempt to make my driveway public, it was all to clear the path for a road that would never be built, funded by money she was stealing. She's having a garden party this Saturday, Sarah said, a glint in her eye. She invited the investors and the prominent neighbors to show off her progress. She's going to bring them to your gate. She wants to show them that she's conquered you. Let her come, I said. I'll be ready. Saturday arrived. It was a beautiful autumn afternoon. I could hear the music drifting from Patty's massive backyard down the hill. I sat on my porch, waiting. Around 3 p.m., I saw them. Patty was leading a group of about 15 people down the wooded path toward my property. They were well-dressed, holding wine glasses. She was gesturing grandly, like a tour guide at the Louvre. I walked down to the gate. I made sure to lock it tight. Patty stopped at the gate. Her audience fanned out behind her. She looked at me with a triumphant smirk. And here, she announced loudly to her guests, is the access point for the connector project. As you can see, we are dealing with a recalcitrant resident, but the legal framework is in place to remove this obstruction. One of the guests, a man in an expensive suit, spoke up. Patty, you said we had clear title to the easement. Why is there a gate? It's a temporary issue. Patty waved her hand dismissively. We're taking it down next week. Actually, I said, speaking up. The group went silent. This gate isn't going anywhere, and neither is your road. Patty's eyes bulged. Excuse me? This is a private tour. You are interrupting. I think your investors might want to see this, I said. I reached over the gate and handed the man in the suit a stack of papers. It was the city's denial letter for the road permit, dated 5 years ago. And underneath it, copies of the invoices showing the HOA money going to her brother-in-law's shell company. The man in the suit looked at the papers. He frowned. He looked at Patty. Patty, this says the permit was denied in 2019. With prejudice. That's outdated. Patty screeched, her face turning a blotchy red. We appealed. It's in process. And this invoice, another guest said, looking over the man's shoulder. Why are we paying $40,000 for grading to a company registered to your sister's home address? The air went out of the group instantly. The murmurs started. Patty tried to talk over them, tried to spin it, but the evidence was in their hands. You lied to us, the man in the suit said, his voice ice cold. You took our money. I did this for the community. Patty yelled, backing away. I am the only one with vision. You people don't deserve my leadership. The guests started walking away. They didn't walk back to her party. They walked toward their cars, pulling out their phones, presumably calling their lawyers. Patty stood alone at my gate. She looked at me, her eyes wild, her lipstick smudged. You ruined everything, she hissed. Do you have any idea who you're messing with? I will have this house bulldozed. I will bury you in lawsuits until you can't afford to buy bread. Patty, I said quietly. Look up. I pointed to the camera mounted on the tree above us. The little red light was blinking. Smile, I said. You're on the record. She stared at the camera, then at me, and for the first time, she looked small. She turned and ran back up the path, stumbling in her heels. I thought that would be the end of it, but desperation makes people do crazy things. 3 days of silence passed. Then, on a Thursday morning, I found a notice taped to my gate. Order of demolition. It was on city letterhead. It claimed my cabin was structurally unsound, violated seismic codes, and was scheduled for immediate demolition in 24 hours. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew it had to be fake, but seeing demolition on official-looking paper is terrifying. But then I looked closer. The seal was slightly pixelated. The signature of the city director was just a squiggly line. I called the city planning office. Sir, the clerk said after looking up my address. We have no file on your property. No inspection has been done. And we certainly don't issue 24-hour demolition notices. That's illegal. She forged it, I whispered. If someone is forging city documents, the clerk said, her voice turning serious, that is a felony. We need to see that paper immediately. That was the nail in the coffin. Not only had she forged the order for me, but she had put copies in every neighbor's mailbox, along with a letter claiming my unsafe house was a threat to the whole neighborhood, trying to incite a mob to drive me out. Instead of a mob, she got an emergency HOA meeting. It was standing room only at the community center that night. Everyone had seen the video of her sneaking around at 2 a.m. I'd posted it to the neighborhood forum. Everyone had heard about the fake road. And now, the forged demolition order was being passed around like evidence at a murder trial. Patty stood at the podium, but the arrogance was gone. She tried to give a speech about protecting property values, about how she was the mother of the community, but nobody was buying it. I did what had to be done, she shouted, her voice cracking. I sacrificed everything for you people. Without me, this place would be chaos. Sarah Miller stood up. The only chaos here, Patty, is the $80,000 missing from the reserve fund. The vote to remove her was unanimous, 47-0. As the meeting ended, Patty walked down the aisle. She stopped in front of me. She looked broken, but there was still that spark of delusion in her eyes. You think you won, she whispered. But you didn't. You just destroyed the only person who cared. I didn't destroy you, Patty, I said. The truth did. She walked out into the night. The legal fallout was swift. The DA took the forgery of city documents very seriously. Combined with the embezzlement charges the new HOA board filed, Patty was looking at real time. She took a plea deal, probation, massive restitution payments, and a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board or community organization. She moved away a month later. I saw the moving truck. She didn't wave. 6 months have passed since then. Sarah is the new HOA president. The first thing she did was implement a transparency policy. Every dime spent is posted online. The Creekview Connector project was officially scrapped. As for me, I'm still in my cabin. The gate is still there, sturdy as ever. But things are different now. Neighbors wave when they drive by. A real wave, not a suspicious glare. A few weeks ago, a little girl rode her bike up to the gate and left a bag of cookies. Her mom told me they were sorry for ever believing the lies. I spent a lot of time thinking I just wanted to be left alone, that I wanted to hide behind my walls. But I realized that sometimes you have to open the gate, not to let the tyrants in, but to let the truth out. That gate was once a battleground. Now, it's just a gate. It protects my home, sure, but it also stands for something else. It stands for the idea that you don't have to be loud to be right. You just have to be steady. You have to know where your lines are, and you have to be willing to stand on them when someone tries to push you off. So, to anyone out there dealing with a Patty Vance, with someone who thinks they own the world and everyone in it, don't let them gaslight you. Document everything. Check the facts. And remember, bullies are only strong as long as you play by their made-up rules. Once you bring them into the real world, they crumble. Thanks for listening. Keep your gates locked, but keep your eyes open. You never know who's watching.